Oh, I'm CHistrue. It's been a long time since I've done any videos, so this will be a little rusty. My apologies for any fits and starts that may occur throughout this video series. This is a video response to Stefan Molyneux that will be broken down into three parts. I'm under no illusion that Mr. Molyneux, or could be Dr. Molyneux, I'm not sure, but I'm under no illusion that he's going to take time out of his busy schedule in order to watch this. He's a busy man. I respect that. I don't consider myself so important that people are going to drop everything to find out what I have to say. Very clearly, my audiences are small, my subscribership is good, but it's not huge. And so this is really more for my own peace of mind than anything else. If Mr. Molyneux is watching this, Dr. Molyneux, whatever the case may be, welcome. I hope that this is respectful, but I also intend to address points that you've made. My first video, I'm going to discuss the issue of education, STEM, non-STEM, Occupy Wall Street. Are these a bunch of liberal arts majors who just can't make it in the big city? Statements you've made to that effect. Number two, I'm going to talk about anarchism, philosophy of anarchism, since you've referred to yourself as an anarchist. Some questions around that. And then number three, I'm going to talk about my own view of a sustainable form of capitalist economics, if indeed we do stay with capitalism, and where it might conflict with some of your ideas. So I better get into it. Number one, Mr. Molyneux, Dr. Molyneux, whatever the case may be, you have stated, you followed essentially the media narrative about Occupy Wall Street Occupy Wall Street protesters, that they are supposedly these liberal arts majors who didn't hack it in STEM, and therefore they deserve their fate of not being able to get jobs. This is a big meme that was pushed in the wake of Occupy Wall Street, and I'm always suspicious whenever there's a protest movement of any kind and I'm hearing talking points, be these protest movements of the left or right. Whenever I hear talking points like, if it's a militia movement, there are beer drinking bubbas who go on and on about UFOs or government conspiracies. I'm always suspicious of that. Who's pushing that narrative. Whether I agree with them or not, I'm suspicious of when the federal government, the media, or anybody puts out a narrative. I have the very same suspicion in the wake of left-wing movements, such as Occupy Wall Street, when there's the narrative of 20-something millennials who have their head in the clouds, and now they're voting for Bernie Sanders, and he has his head in the clouds, and what they really need to do is become mature grown-ups and vote for the very people who've been destroying our economy for generations now. I don't know, there's something wrong with this. Liberal arts, clearly you don't have any respect for it, and yet you yourself are a non-STEM major. You yourself delve into issues of philosophy. You yourself would consider yourself to be a counselor, which is a non-STEM major. You yourself would say that, speak about history, or the history of philosophy, or the history of ideas. So in essence, there's a contradiction here. If a libertarian rightist, i.e. I would consider myself a libertarian of the left, but if a libertarian conservative would come out and speak about issues of philosophy or history, then this is something that's very mature. It's something that's very adult. It's something that's very rigorous. But if somebody who's on the other end of the spectrum actually deconstructs not only the state, which is a good thing, I think it's good to deconstruct power, but also deconstructs the market economy at the very same time, you would say that they're thinking of sloppy, or you would say that they should have majored in STEM. By STEM, let's be very honest. The S at the beginning and the M at the end part, you don't seem to be so fond of. You don't seem to be quite as fond of the theoretical sciences, or theoretical physics, or cosmology, or that type of thing, or abstract mathematics, set theory. You seem to be more believing in the technology and engineering part of it. I don't necessarily know how one could be apart from the other. Ideas from theoretical physics have influenced engineering. Ideas from engineering have influenced theoretical physics. Math has influenced both. Both have influenced math. I don't think that you can necessarily separate one from the other. I would say the same thing about history, the humanities, and the sciences. It's not but a few centuries ago when the same people who were experts in one were often experts in the other. And in contrast to the dominant kind of secularist narrative that tends to be prevalent among progressives, it was also the case that centuries ago science was a form of natural philosophy, or even in some cases natural theology. And so in a sense, science and religion were not as split apart as they would become in later centuries. In fact, even in the 19th century, a lot of the people who were really enthusiastic about Darwin were the so-called dissenter Christians, the radical Protestants who wanted, who were against the Anglican Church. This was definitely true in England and somewhat even true in America before the 20s. But it's a complicated story, and I'm getting off track. I'm going to say I haven't done this in a long time, and I don't want to digress. In summation, the idea that the reason that people who are Occupy Wall Street protesters, that their concerns should be dismissed is because they aren't STEM majors is ridiculous. If everybody studied STEM, or the TE part, okay, technology and engineering, if everybody studied TE, then in essence we would have a glut in the market of people who've majored in technology and engineering. We would have so many people who've majored in technology and engineering that the capitalist system would say, you're worthless. And so in essence, it has not addressed the fundamental structural problem of our capitalist system as it is by saying, well, you should have majored in something. What about majoring in law? I mean, law is definitely, you can make a lot of money doing it. But you and I would both agree that there's a lot of social parasitism associated with it, particularly, I would say, when you get into corporate law or some branches of law that are just about the money, but they don't produce anything. Finance doesn't produce anything. It moves money around. At least TE, technology and engineering, I will say that produces something. That is very, very honorable. But these other things, to me, have less honor. And yet they are more remunerative than STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. They're more remunerative, but they have less honor. The idea that a person who's a fully developed person who wants to respect themselves should simply do what society tells them is the opposite of what a supposed freedom lover should be advocating. Now, I would say if a young person is choosing a major in the current system that we have, these are valid concerns, whether it pays well. I think that it should be considered. It's not the case that if you do what you love, the money will necessarily come. That's one of those. It's a valid point if one is simply speaking pragmatically. To say maybe engineering would be better than certainly some of the less rigorous humanities majors that might be out there. I understand that. I concede that the humanities has been watered down. I think that, and I by the way, we may share some common opinions about political correctness. You might be surprised to hear me say that, but we do. But the idea that it is an inherent good to major in that which gives you the money and that which society values is the opposite of what a true freedom supporter should be upholding. A true freedom supporter should be upholding character development over and above anything else. And character development means, to my opinion, to me, character development means standing with the true principle of who you are, come hell and come high water. End of part one.